Stop thinking that tomorrow is the solution and just do it today. If you're thinking about making a decision today, you have the ability and opportunity to make a decision today. But tomorrow, there are no guarantees.
Hello, my name is Johnny Phillip, and you are listening to Breaking Down Addiction, a podcast by National Addiction Specialists. And I will be your host today, Johnny Phillip. And I'm joined by our co-host, Chad Elkin. And then today, our very special guest is Patrick Custer. Thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
So excited to be here.
So excited to have you.
Yeah.
We've been friends for a little bit now.
Yep.
And we met in a men's meeting. Yeah, we were both in recovery.
Yeah.
So I do want to start off with the same question that I start off with every podcast episode that we have. And that is, if you can speak to yourself right now, you in sobriety, if you could talk to yourself in active addiction, what would you say to him?
Stop thinking that tomorrow is the solution and just do it today. I lived on the narrative assigning myself to I'll do it tomorrow, thinking that I had the willpower to make that decision tomorrow. I think that we all have, no matter where we are in life, if you're thinking about making a decision today, you have the ability and opportunity to make a decision today. But tomorrow, there are no guarantees. And tomorrow never, it did come for me, but not on my own terms like I thought. Let me tell you, there was a long time of me saying, tomorrow I'll do it. Tomorrow I'll get my stuff together. Tomorrow, and it didn't end up being me. It was some outside influences that
Which sometimes helps.
pulled me in.
Yeah, I think regardless of whether it's addiction or anything else, like the father of success is action, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's whether it's business or, addiction, I think you're exactly right. Things are never going to be perfect in life exactly where you want them to make changes, but you need to take action, and then you'll figure out the details as you go.
It's so, yes. And it's so interesting to me how, if it's something that gives me like gratification, especially immediate gratification, taking action is such a like non-thought, like almost just a easy, eat the Oreos, do the, whatever, or drink the beer, back then. But, when it's something that is difficult or change or different, or not fun, but we know we need to do it. For me, it is taking action. It feels like I'm looking for the same morsel of motivation, even just like a piece of the same motivation that I have for taking action on other things, which is not real. That delusion in my head that says I need the motivation to be there, and it should feel at least a little bit like the motivation I have for these other things and decisions that I make. That never comes. And to your point, I continued to learn that lesson. Hell, I continue to learn that lesson today in other areas of my life since getting sober. That because lo and behold, at 24 years old, after getting sober, I still had a lot of things that I needed to heal from, and change, and things still keep popping up. And I don't know if I'll ever be at a place where change feels like I can easily approach it with that viewpoint of simply approach it with that viewpoint, like what you're saying, of just taking action, knowing that it's today. It's easy for me to say that. You know, they say like it's easier to teach than to actually do. And it's easy for me to sit here and say that to you. But in the other side of that breath, I'm going to tell you, even still today, the two main ways I learn lessons are through mistakes and metaphor. I couldn't really tell you the other ways.
Tell us more about the metaphor way. I like this.
Well, obviously, so mistakes need no explanation, right? Like, and sometimes it's a second, third, fourth.
There's no gray
try.
area. It's black and white.
Yeah. But with metaphor, you know, the power in metaphor for a regular person, but especially someone, I have ADHD amidst a number of other things that are, you know, jumbled up in my lovely brain, and I deal with those the best I can, and but it can be, I would say, it feels more difficult for me than the average person. But that may be just me wanting to be terminally unique. I have no idea. I might be, you know, I might not be the odd person out there.
I suffer with TU as well.
TU?
Terminally unique.
Oh, never heard somebody refer to it as that. That's funny.
I haven't heard that.
I mean, I know
TUS.
terminally unique, but yeah,
Oh.
TU, yeah, that's great. But yeah, taking a story, take me on a story, take me on a ride with a story, whether it's 3 minutes, whether it's an hour. I mean, you usually can keep my brain on track if you've got a good enough story and are telling it well, in an hour. And I can wrap my head around a new concept. It's much more difficult if you have written a speech and you've got, you know, pointers, and you're going to give a lecture. You're probably going to get me to retain one or two things if they're really good points, if that. And that's just me. I know that enough about myself. I've done enough, you know, but I did enough years in college. I did enough, man.
Yeah, so I also have ADHD, so
Yeah?
I'm right there with you. And I've studied this a lot, and it's interesting. Most people look at, when they hear they have ADHD, they're diagnosed, et cetera, you know, most people kind of view it as a negative, you know. And the more I've learned about it and the more I've read about it, I actually kind of view it as a superpower in a way, you know. So you can kind of take your negative. So it might be my worst quality, but it's also my best quality, you know, because your brain thinks it's just a different way of thinking, really.
Yeah.
So, you know, like, I feel like I can solve problems that my spouse who doesn't have ADHD cannot solve, you know. But yeah, I can't sit in a chair and listen to 10 hours of lectures, but also understand, like you, I'm more of a visual learner. Mm-hmm. So like, I know, you know, I've got to have the visuals, like my audio processing, you know, it's different, and it's different with most people with ADHD. So yeah, I totally relate to you in relation to that.
It's interesting that you say that, because having, you know, you and I just met, but even we form opinions about people within how many seconds of meeting each other, you know, like I would not have guessed that about you. But that just goes to show that, you know, we talk about in the circles of, you know, the topic of ADHD, masking and the different things of how we present socially, publicly, and what have you. Whether it's conscious, subconscious, or to what degree it manifests in our lives, right?
Sure.
I think the point that I was getting at is that there are so many people diagnosed and undiagnosed that have it, and you know, we just would never. I never would have known if you hadn't said that, but I think that just talking about it really helps people hone in. For me, it helps them hone in when I'm having a discussion, period, on understanding a little bit more about how I tick.
You also get to take your power back.
Yeah.
Talking about it makes it more real, and then you can start working on it.
It does. And I will say that it is, I was a late life diagnosed individual. And so I I'm still learning different like coping skills and things that are helping me tremendously. And so just like anything that, like you said, can be it can be a huge strength. It can be your Achilles heel. It depends on where we're talking about. Caleb Lovely. Okay, this is somebody who was on my podcast, y'all, some time back. Johnny and I were talking about this before we started the show. So Caleb came on my show and said this quote. I call it like one of those golden nuggets of truth. I have a book where I write all these quotes down because they're so good, and I've talked about this one so many times. At any given point, he said, you can take the fork in the road of either indecision or discomfort or whatever you're going through, whether it's good, bad, ugly, and take it to the extreme. Meaning, like, we hear all the time, find there's a lesson in it, or maybe there's a purpose. See if there's any kind of purpose.
I know what you're getting at.
And he said, no, every single situation you have the choice to take it to the classroom or take it to the coffin. Like, am I going to just give up and let this be something that completely affects me in the most negative way? Or am I going to relentlessly see how I can use this for the greater good in my life? And I don't think that, like, I've mulled over that time and time again, and I'm like, I don't even think that takes away from the process of allowing us walk through grief either, because you can still do that while acknowledging and walking through the grieving process. Anyway, I love that quote. I probably will never stop saying it because it's really helped me in a lot of situations where I'm like, I get in that stuckness mentally and emotionally.
Well, thank you for bringing that up. And I want to earmark some episodes from your podcast, but I do want to rewind it just a little bit here.
Sure.
So we're in Maryland Farms in Brentwood.
Mm-hmm.
And you definitely have a lot of history here.
Yeah.
And we were talking before the podcast that Maryland Farms used to just be a little gravel cut through. And you enjoyed it as a child, right?
Well, the road y'all are on. So Maryland
Virginia
Way. Yeah, Virginia Way. The main road through Maryland Farms, that was there probably since, I don't know, early 80s. But yeah, in the mid 90s, I want to say, I was still a kid. Yeah, this road, I remember when they cut it out, it was dirt and they threw gravel on it. And I remember my sister and I being like, can we go the cool way? Because it was, back through this
road.
Giant tract of land that we'd only seen fenced in for however long. And now it's this metropolis of.
I think they may have a historical picture at Mirables of some of the.
Yeah.
That was the original. I don't know if the audience. I don't know if the audience is going to be interested in this or not. But I'll tell you really quick. The Mirables was the original Maryland Manor, and so that was. I can't remember the man's name, but he purchased this entire tract of land that known as Maryland Farms for his wife named Mary, who was obsessed with horses, and they came down here and named it Maryland after her. And so that house is, however old, I think built in the late 1800s. And
an investment by that guy.
Right. It's a really cool house if you've never been in it. But I spent my childhood running through the halls because it was my dad's office until yeah.
Wow.
They moved it out.
Mirables was your dad's office?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Very cool.
And then it stayed empty for a couple of years, and Mirables took it. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
Very cool.
But speaking about your dad, Brentwood, you are from Brentwood.
yeah.
And so you grew up in a conservative religious family. And how did this contribute to some shame and anxiety that happened?
Well, I mean, I know it's really rare for that to happen for somebody who grew So I didn't know this, but I knew I was always different, or I felt different, talk about terminal uniqueness. But what I mean in that is I didn't know I was gay till, I don't know, when I finally, the light bulb clicked and I admitted it to myself and knew, but I was an adult. I was a late bloomer. But there is there's some bit of a knowing and a difference, and I definitely experienced that. I was a homeschool kid that grew up in Brentwood. We had a lot of diametrically opposing things about our lives that made me feel so different no matter where I was. So growing up, we were Pentecostal. We went to a church at the time. My parents called it the inner city because it kind of was. I mean, like back then, over on Lebanon Road where it was like industrial area, and it was not built up whatsoever. And it was just like, the other side of the world to me. And but it was a predominantly black church. Like I was one of the few white kids that was in which I love. I mean, like I loved it. It was so normal for me, but we're talking about the early 90s in Brentwood. So I'm a homeschool kid growing up in Brentwood where I don't remember. I mean, like, I'm just saying, Brentwood is very different today than it was then, but it was a very different city back then. I don't remember having any people of color that lived around us. There was not diversity here. Mm-hmm. And so I'm a kid. I don't understand that, like, and when I would have friends over to, sleep over a party or whatever from church, which for me as a homeschool kid, church was life. Like we were there 4 times a week,
It was your chance to be social.
Yes. And if you can't tell, I really like being social. So
we're thankful for that.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so kids would come over and they felt uncomfortable. It was weird. And whether it was overtly communicated or, just felt like I always felt that like, oh, okay, this is weird. Maybe I shouldn't keep asking kids from church to come over because there was always something that felt like messages communicated that like I was different in a way, or my life was different in a way that just like was either uncomfortable for them or not cool. You insert descriptors, a million different ways. So
you were probably seeking out connection.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, 1,000 different ways, and then, it's the early 90s. It was still a fringe movement of homeschooling your kids. Mm-hmm. So there were not very many people that homeschooled. But of the people that did in Williamson County and Nashville, you better bet that we were connected to them because, there weren't that many people. My mom started the first homeschool group in Middle Tennessee. And yeah. And, but again, it was one of those things where like you grew up, you're surrounded by like Presbyterians and Southern Baptists and everybody like that is my reality of like what I was just, everybody was, they're a different flavor Christian than what we were raised as, but it didn't mix with Pentecostal. They were all like, your church is weird and wild, like way too, what is that? Like that is something else, and so, yeah, it just kept getting reinforced that the areas of my life didn't mix. So if I was going to be able to connect, I needed to be able to fit in or chameleon when I'm in any of these areas, and just honestly not try and mix them because it is that, So I'd say as I've looked back and reflected on some of the earliest ways that the themes that we talk about in recovery showed up for me that lay the groundwork for addiction, that would be a huge one.
Was that part of the shame and the anxiety and how to counteract that, you think?
Yes. So I would say that, the shame came in that's self-explanatory of the things that I just discussed. But as I got older and my personality started to come out, I really didn't know what to do and how to harness that. Like it was one of those things that I kept getting a message of like, you're too much, you're a lot, which quite frankly, I am a lot.
But that's what makes you special.
Exactly. I mean, as an adult, I've had the
draws people to
opportunity
you.
well, thank you. I mean, but I've had the opportunity to figure out ways that to harness it. And also, I mean, I'm a lot less of a ball of energy that just doesn't know which direction it's going to go because, you know, that I always joke that, you know, the diagnosis of ADHD, you know, what was it, a few years ago, they put it all underneath the umbrella as a spectrum. And, but I still joke to this day. I'm like, I've been ADHD my whole life, but the H dropped off at some point. Like you age, you kind of age out of the hyperactivity part of it.
That makes sense. The older you get, less energy.
Yeah. So,
you learn how to focus it. You know, you learn how to be more organized. You figure out what works for you. You know,
that's been a big theme of mine, is identifying how to identify when I have, because windows will come and go for me when I can focus, when I know how to identify this is one where I can do these things, that type of things that need to get done. I also know when a certain window hits that might signal me that you're done making life decisions for the day or anything important for the day. Getting to that point was, again, a lot of mistakes, sure, but it's a very valuable place to get to know yourself enough to identify those.
Right. Yeah. For me personally, I tell people, I'm upfront with, you know, especially my business colleagues, et cetera, you know, that, 100% I have ADHD. And, if I get, my strength is I, visionary mentality of this is the vision for this company, this business, et cetera. But sometimes you have too many ideas and you got to focus in on which one you're going to pursue.
Yes.
And so sometimes you need like a counterpart, to kind of like focus you and say, all right, those are all, I'm glad you came up with 1,000 ideas. Let's decide which one we're going to do and exactly the steps to get there.
I love that. And yes, that is very helpful. This doesn't have to do with having a counterpart, but kind of on a similar plane. I'm doing a lot of, like I said, a lot of work right now on addressing how to function better with my ADHD. And one of the things that was assigned in I'm doing an ADHD like therapy coaching group for professional adults, and it's been great and so eye-opening for me. But like,
That's incredible.
I would recommend it to anybody that that has ADHD. But one of the things that we were working through is task management, time management, and like how you put your planning of the day together. And one of our assignments was picking a big three for your day.
Yeah.
And letting everything else has to be bonus accomplishments.
Yep.
That sigh was both needed and for dramatic effect.
Love it.
So I would love to say that I've gotten to the point where I can do that, but my big three still has like about 6 sub-points on it. And every time we go into and we're like, okay, so how was this on your week? We're like, that doesn't, yes. And, our, it's a psychiatrist who leads the group, and she's always like, okay, so do you really think that was picking 3 in the...
Yeah, you more have 9. Yeah.
Sometimes I just pick 1. Sometimes instead of doing like a big 3, sometimes...
How do you do that?
Yeah, well, I just, come up with your to-do list, and then whatever you think's the most important out of that, pick that one. Say, all right, I'm just going to accomplish one thing today, and what's the plan for that? And then, obviously, you can set, all right, I'm going to set the number of minutes it's going to take, and so, that's how I get it done personally.
I think my skin is going to melt off as you're explaining.
Quote unquote, being proactive versus reactive. When you have people coming to you and be like, all right, checking your email early in the day, that's going to get you doing things what other people want you to do versus, all right, I actually
Yeah.
have to accomplish something for myself and for my life. I want to get this off my chest. I don't have this anxiety, and this is what's going to really move me forward. Being proactive and kind of coming up with those to-dos and knocking those out. I totally agree with that.
So I love that you said that, because I will say for myself, if I don't do that process first thing in the morning, ain't going to get done. Because
Good point.
just like you said, the minute I open my email, off to the races, and everything's a priority at that point.
Texts start rolling in, emails
Yeah.
start rolling in, more is added to your list
Yeah.
of things to do, and then the weeks ahead, the months ahead.
I've had to realize that for me, I mean, I'm a big tech person. I have lists upon lists, but like all the things in my phone. But what we're talking about right now has to be analog. I've got to have it on paper. So I keep that book with me. It's always in the same room with me, so I can go back and reference it when I have something that checks in and says, okay, well, where are we on our? Because I'll veer off. Right, like things pull you out from being anchored, where where I need to be, and so, but yeah, it's a work in progress, and it is not easy.
And I hope everybody in listener land who's listening to this, if you're affected by ADHD or
Yeah.
somebody in your family or friend, hopefully this helps, because you learn things
Yep.
from something like this. And I do want to move forward a little bit.
Yes,
And
yes,
this
yes.
is, so homeschooled, and then you went to college. There's a bit of a 180 that happened there.
Yeah,
And so that you started using, in a particular, alcohol and stimulants.
so some quick behind the scenes on that. Family lineage genetically, because this is a question people always ask: did it run in your family? Dad's side, yes. I mean, we didn't have blood; we had alcohol in the veins, right? Mom's side is like the complete opposite, and so yeah, it runs in the family. My grandfather died like the most alcoholic way that you can. They found him, I don't know how many weeks after he had passed, but like hemorrhaged out because of his.
GI issues, yeah. Esophageal varices and all that.
Yep. And just a horrific way to go, both for the person and for the family. And
100%.
I'm the youngest of 4 kids, and my oldest brother, we're all part of the same, we have the same parents. Separate. He's 19 years older than me, but we're the most genetically similar. And he was drinking addictively since the age of 12, got sober at 30. So when he got sober, if I'm doing the math correctly, I think that I was 12 years old. And so my whole adolescence, I remember what I saw. I grew up in a dry household because my parents had experienced everything they went through with my brother my whole life and before that, of the fear of losing him, putting him through countless treatment centers. And every time he stayed in Texas when we moved here. And so we would go back and visit every now and then. Every time we go to see him, I just remember he had a slur, a stammer, and he always had this odor to him, right? Because he was drinking around the clock.
And you didn't know what it meant really at that time.
No, I did. My parents were very open
Okay.
with us from a young age because they didn't want us to misconstrue what was going on.
Wow.
And so, I mean, there were a lot of things they shielded us from because he would call at nighttime. And so I remember I was a lot older than most kids. We had a rule before I was allowed to answer the phone at night. There was a cutoff time that we had landlines. For people who don't know, kids who don't know what those are, it's back when we used to have cords on the phones, not just to charge them. And and so I don't remember what time it was, but like probably after dinner, we weren't allowed to answer the phone. And later I found out it was because my brother would call and he would be like, not make any sense, and they didn't want me to be exposed to that. So, but I definitely got all the messages that, Hagen was sick with alcoholism, and he's okay with me talking about it now because he's sober, and thank God, he's a miracle in and of itself. But
Right.
his story is as much a part of mine because of how it set me up set the stage for my own stuff. And
Let's
so,
make it interesting here.
yeah. So, you watch as a kid something that is clearly, harming someone. This looks terrible. Like, why would you ever want that for yourself or for someone else? So of course I made multiple commitments to myself over and over. I'm never going to touch. Why would you ever touch alcohol? To me, alcohol, not just alcoholism. Alcohol meant alcoholism, and alcoholism was like, it was the only alcoholism I knew was Hagen, and it was a miserable existence and quite terrifying. And it was no way to live. And he is so lucky to be alive. When he finally came to Nashville and got sober, he like took a year for his brain to come back online. He wasn't like, they thought he was pickled. He couldn't talk.
Was it signs of wet brain?
Yeah.
Or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's a miracle in and of himself 10 times over. But, that was my bar for what addiction is.
Never going to do it.
And never, no. And I was also never going to touch alcohol. But for whatever reason, I was in a safe enough environment in college. And what I mean by that is, like, with a small group of friends at a house that I just felt like they were all responsible. I didn't seem crazy, all those things. I did the whole, had one beer, felt fine, didn't feel like I was, because in my head, one beer meant that I was immediately going to want
alcoholism, maybe.
Have alcoholism, but it was going to be off to the races. I was going to want a bunch more. And not only that, but like, I would immediately lose control.
Mm-hmm.
But using like my biblical terminology, which is what I could really draw from at the time, what I actually felt was, for the first time, a peace that passed all understanding that I had ever known, and a quietness of my brain, the ADHD that I hadn't been diagnosed with yet, and a lot of anxiety going on there. And all of a sudden, I felt calm. I felt like comfortable. It wasn't this thing where,
in your own skin.
comfortable in my own skin. And I think I ended up having three beers that night. I didn't get drunk. I paced myself out, and that was enough of a thing for me to. Side note, there was also a narrative that my parents had they didn't do any harm reduction type of talking to me about drugs and alcohol. It was just, they're bad, don't ever do them. They will literally tear your life apart, and absolutely not. Very black and white of it all, which ended up being true for me. But at the same time, I was very underprepared for college when it came to that, because I had no idea about safe drinking if you were going to choose to do that.
It's all brand new to you.
Yes. Yeah. And I didn't have anybody there saying, okay, well, now that you've chosen to start drinking, these are some things we need to talk about, and whatever. And so one thing led to another, though, and it did become a tool to have fun. And have fun I did. Make friends I did. All the things, and it was fun, just like it is for everybody, until it's not fun. Mm-hmm. It worked until it didn't work.
Right.
And I went from, the stages very quickly, age of 20 to 24. I mean, like, very short period of time of drinking, like, very socially, to drinking heavily on weekends, and then around the clock. Couldn't sleep more than 2 hours at a time.
Because morning drinking, all those questions.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, literally, like, I couldn't sleep more than, I would sleep 2 hours, wake up, and be like, well, that's all I'm gonna get, and then continue drinking.
Withdrawal symptoms. So, you have tremors, DTs, seizures, all that type of stuff.
I never had, to my knowledge, a seizure, but DTs, yes. I mean, that is what I would experience if I didn't have. There were points where, because I would say that the level of my how the alcoholism was manifesting physically in me would kind of, I guess, go up and down.
Yeah.
So there were times where like beer wouldn't cut it.
Mm-hmm.
I would go into DTs because I couldn't get my
Wow.
BAC up high enough drinking beer.
Yeah, and for the listeners, alcohol withdrawal can be deadly because you can die from seizures, right? Versus, even though you can overdose on opioids, usually opioid withdrawal, you feel like you have a really bad case of the flu, but you don't die from it. So it's one of those things that when you're withdrawing from alcohol, it's a big deal.
Well, and they just to add to that, there's so many things that alcohol masks when you're drinking it around the clock that become unmasked when you stop drinking.
Mm-hmm.
In the years of working in this field, I've seen so many people that had certain problems with organ or heart or you name it, but your body starts to you introduce a poison and keep it there long enough, the organs are all going to start functioning and need that poison in order to function because they've changed over to a place of not just tolerating but like only operating well or their version of well at that point in that environment.
Sure.
And that's where I lived for the last year before getting sober. And so we talk about the shame. It's very hard for me to explain to people outside of the religious environment that I was raised in because people ask me all the time, didn't your parents know? I mean, like, didn't everybody know that you were gay? And there were people in my life that were more removed. They were like, yeah, we always knew you were gay. Wow.
Why didn't you tell me?
Yeah, I would have loved to know. But it would have been something extremely terrifying for me to have been told. Not that kids didn't say it, but kids also all said, I mean, like growing up, guys say that to each other, period. Like you hear it thrown around, at least when I was being raised. You hear
It doesn't happen anymore. I'm just kidding.
all right. I mean, like, it's like in some circles it does, and in other circles it
I'm
happens
joking.
less.
Of course it's still,
But I mean, you're right. It is a different day and age where I think that there are certain environments where it does happen less because it's more accepted, tolerated, celebrated. And
Well said.
yeah, but so you think about being gay. I don't want to be as this thing that people are like, Patrick, the gay guy. It's not my it's not, it's not my personality. It's not who I am, and it's never been something that I want to be known for. But when you have to fight through so much internally and externally to be able to accept who you are and what you are, and then after accepting it, embracing it, and then realize that there's still socially a lot of things to do to, as far as community is concerned, and all these, there's so much about that it does become more. I mean, there are reasons why it's more than just, for me, more than just a little piece of who I am. And as that was kind of coming out of the woodwork, there were things said from my family, what have you, even before that time leading up to me getting sober. And I remember when I don't think I've ever said this publicly before, but all right, quick story about the window of opportunity. I went from being a thriving college student to, doing well to I had been dropped out of my program, but was so defeated about the shame of being dropped out of my program that I remember the first day it happened, I was like, screw this, I'm gonna go drink. I can't, tomorrow. And that happened over and over. It just got worse and worse and worse and worse. This was like September of 2010, and it lasted until over semester, like the semesters turned over, and I kept quote unquote going to school. And which was me. At that point I was living at my parents' house, going to college, and I would leave and go to school, which was not going to school. I'd leave and go drink all day somewhere, and my dad had a major cardiac incident and had to have. I mean, like, he went to the hospital, had open heart surgery, and it was during that time I was at my parents' house. Everybody else was at the hospital, and my siblings all came home and did an intervention on me. I had run out of alcohol. I mean, it was the perfect storm, because I wouldn't say storm. It was the perfect occurrence of the things that needed to happen, where I had a window of opportunity and the willingness to accept help, because it wasn't always there. I mean, like, it would come and go where I had glimpses of, like, this is a problem, but I'm going to take care of it tomorrow, and believing I had the willpower to do it.
That is a lot at that point in time.
Yeah.
With your father.
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah.
Some timing obviously does matter occasionally.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, but I just, like, I'm so grateful that everything happened in the timing that it did, because if it hadn't, I think that I would have figured a way, that addiction would have figured a way to argue itself, squirrel itself out of any type of help that was trying to break through. And so I ended up going to treatment that day. Like, pack your bags, or you need to find somewhere else to go.
And you're 24 at this point.
Yes.
That's really commendable for you getting sober at 24. I mean,
Yeah,
for
it usually
me,
takes most people a lot longer than that.
Well, and I thought at the time, I was like, in the back of my head, I'm like, my friends are all already, like, they had just graduated college and were going to either start their master's or whatever program, or get their first post-college job, and I hadn't finished yet, and I just felt so behind. And at that point, I'm like, I'm so old and to not have my life together. I'm surrounded by people that are all, like, doing, in my head, they're doing, yes.
In life, yeah.
And it just, of course, made me just feel the shame. It just added to all the shame and things weighing down. And it just goes to show you that we all have this perspective that is so, especially in the middle of our storm of addiction, it's so difficult and almost impossible for us to see outside of our own experience.
Well said.
And at least that's my story. And I mean, it was a long time into sobriety before I looked back and was like, oh, I was one of the young ones.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like,
Absolutely
years before I looked back and said that. So, like, I wanted to take a minute and comment on what you said for the viewer listener that thinks that they're either too young or too old. I don't care how old you are. You're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You're wrong, because if you still have a heartbeat and you're still breathing, there is more life left for you to live that is better than what you're experiencing right now.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Yeah.
At this point, how did you commit to recovery at that early age? Because I think that's the biggest battle, is making that decision, but then also sticking with it.
Great question. So, sorry, I shift a lot while let me know if I've
You're good.
screwed up the
Be comfy,
camera focus.
Be comfy as possible.
But so you go through, my experience was going to treatment. Not everybody goes to treatment.
Mm-hmm.
I remember having friends, a couple friends that before I went to treatment and got sober, who got, like, curious because they didn't like the way their life was going, and they just started going to AA because they wanted to, or another 12-step community.
Sans treatment.
Mm-hmm. They were like,
AA.
yeah, I think that some, there might be something better than this, and I'm like, what's wrong with you?
Nicolas Cage.
The thought of I'm like, you are no fun. Like, I was the worst influence too, because I was the guy that would literally try and pull them back into like going out Friday night and drink, because I'm like, you're fine, you're not, because
meeting tonight. Dude,
right,
we got a case of beer here.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and it all related back to my own stuff. I didn't want to drink alone. I didn't want, if they got better, then that meant that if they who weren't drinking as much as I was felt like they needed to stop drinking and go to 12 steps, I'm like, what does that mean for me? Right. So that can't be your reality. Come on, let's go back. And so people have different capabilities of getting sober various different ways, depending on a number of things, in their age, makeup, life, obviously. And mine, though, I'm thoroughly convinced that what happened needed to happen. I think I would have been a revolving door if I had been sent to or tried to go to meetings at that point in my life. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is that I would have gone to meetings and relapsed, and gone to if I was lucky, gone back to meetings and relapsed, gone back to meetings, relapsed. I needed to go away somewhere and be in a container, an environment that was safe, with people that were going through the same things that I was going through, that took the burden of shame a little bit more off me, because we're all in the same boat. We're all in the same place,
That helped me too.
Yeah. And I know, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that is absolutely what I needed. And I ended up I got bamboozled, and I'm so grateful that I did, because I originally thought it was going to be a 30-day deal, and it was. But then I was like, hey, we think you would really benefit from an extension. And I got, I think, 4 monthly extensions. So I was...
Wow. This wasn't an a la carte month.
Your parents were calling in.
Yeah. And so at some point, like, I don't know, I was bought into the process within that first extension month enough to be like, I want to do this thing. Once I got past I couldn't imagine life without, it had been so long. And my brain had like blocked out the memory of what it felt like, the processes that your brain goes through normally, from wake up to going to sleep. When you're drinking around the clock, you don't experience those.
There's zero routine there.
Yeah.
Well, there's zero routine, but too. I mean, like, and you're not getting the good sleep. Your REM cycles are screwed. Right. Yeah. And sorry for my lovely, colorful technical terms, but for me, and with the picture that I'm trying to paint, is that all of a sudden, I remember having this realization. Probably it was after a month into sobriety and long-term treatment programming. The things that I started to notice so my drug of slavery was alcohol. My drug of choice was uppers. So I was speedballing. Yes. So I was sleeping once every 3 days.
Bringing you down, helping with anxiety and stress, and then bring this up to keep partying and keep rolling.
Yeah, but the partying had ended a long time ago. It was literally all just to function. And unlike my brother, see, this is where the narrative I had kept making the logical in my head. I never had the stammer. I never had the whatever like my brother, because I was on speed. So much speed.
And be somewhat coherent.
Yes. So I like to think that I was pretty good at mixing that cocktail to where I was right in the middle all the time, but yeah, I wasn't like walking around stammering or things like that. And so I think it also made it really hard for people in my life there was obviously something very off in my personality had changed, and I was doing things that I wouldn't have done and not showing up for commitments and just all of that. But putting your finger on exactly what it was really, really, really hard, because it didn't look like what everybody had known from this guy. It didn't look, Also, it translated in my brain to, I am different. This doesn't look like all the boxes you would have to check off for all the things that represented dysfunction.
Totally.
You know, it's so crazy how our brains will trick us
Well,
like that.
I think, you know, your brain, when you're doing alcohol or drugs, you know, basically, you know, it does three things that makes you want to go back to it. So it's like, as you're using alcohol, et cetera, you know, you're not getting high and feeling that dopamine rush that you used to, because gradually you have no dopamine left. And so you're just trying to feel normal by drinking. And so, you know, you don't feel normal or get the dopamine rush from the normal things that you get it from, like eating, sexual activity, you know, exciting things in life, right? You don't feel those things anymore.
Yeah.
And so that makes you want to go back and use again, right? Same thing with, you were talking about, you needed to be separated in your recovery environment. I think getting away from those drugs and cues, your brain has those chronic, you know, cues when you think about using alcohol or drugs, you know, that makes you want, that spills a little bit of dopamine in that process, makes you want to go back to using. And then, you know, and so in the fact of, if you're using and your ADHD, you're more impulsive and compulsive. And so those things as well also make you want to use. So it's like your brain is, in a way, after all this, is making you want to use again.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Fighting for what it feels like it is predictable to give you what you need, or help you escape the stuff that's scary. Because you do it for long enough, you've surpassed periods of life where you would normally, like, especially as a young person, you go through certain maturation processes that are depending on where you are, right? Like, there's a beginning and an end that are kind of supposed to happen, and you stay on substances long enough through those. When you come out, it's scary as hell, because you don't know where you're supposed to be. Like, who am I supposed to measure myself against or be in a group with, or how am I supposed to feel? Because you have no way to trace back. There's no connection. You don't feel the connection back to what was normal, before.
Right.
And so, some examples for me of what I was leading into was that, talking about the dopamine and how things start to flow, like the rhythms come back and get back into a pattern and things. Everything from, like, the ways that you feel as your brain wakes up. Maybe you hear the birds. Some people never like the sound of birds. I loved birds. I loved hearing birds in the morning. But before I got sober, I mean, I remember that being one of the most shameful things. I hated the sound of birds.
Patrick.
Because every single morning, that was the sound of, you failed again.
I'm so glad you brought this up. I felt the same thing. Go ahead.
Really?
Yes.
It was terrible. It was like the alarm of shame.
Yep.
And you couldn't have a more pure creature that is just, like, doing its thing, waking up, you know, singing, and like the crux of, like, knowing that that's kind of effed. That there was a part of my brain that was like, that this is so off that I am upset about these birds. But the reason I'm upset, that is one thing that I was not delusional about. I was very clear with myself about the reason of being upset, was that I had failed again because no matter how messed up I was in my addiction, I think one of the biggest things was, like, well, I'm at least going to take care of myself enough to go to bed tonight. Like, that was my threshold of, like, taking care of myself and being healthy, was actually going to bed and getting some sleep that night.
A little bit of sleep.
Yes. So, I had many, 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 many more nights of zero sleep than I did of sleep. And the birds were always that thing of, like, here it is again. It was just like, I mean, I don't know, it was just 9 p.m. a few minutes ago. How are we here? And what was I doing for the last 6 hours? 8 hours, you know, losing track of time. At this point, I couldn't have told you who the president was. It was absolutely embarrassing. So, you know, that's one of those things that I remembered all of a sudden hearing a few months, like a month and a half into sobriety, hearing birds and be like, oh, it's such a beautiful morning. Like, oh, you know, and then I started to notice things as the day would go on with my body, my brain, the cycles that were coming back and feeling a positive rhythm. And that was something that started to feed into the positive feedback loop for me, which, listener, if you haven't heard that term before, is like, you know, when we were talking about motivation earlier, if you're anything like me, a lot of the time I need some positivity thrown into the return on investment. If I'm doing something that's uncomfortable, even if it's good for me, if it's uncomfortable, I'm going to need some type of reward shown to me that's showing me value in the near future if I'm going to be able to keep doing it, you know? And so that's what I mean about the positive feedback loop. For me, that was one of the earliest signs that, like, oh, this is working. And I did have joy. Like, I can now remember I actually did love life before I was drinking. Like, I loved life. Mm-hmm. But I could not conceive having fun, let alone having any bit of quote unquote sanity or peace in my life. If you had said, could you ever see yourself as being sober or putting the bottle down? I thought all it was going to ever be was getting it under control. I thought that was the only option.
That's your addiction talking to
yourself
too. I remember when I first went to treatment, when I went, I'm like, I'm not going to quit drinking. I'm going to get to the point where I can have a couple glasses of wine with dinner. And that was just my addiction telling me, like, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. You're going to have to go full in on this thing if you want to see any sort of success, if you want to live a healthy life.
Yeah.
I'm just glad you said all that. But
yeah.
We've been speaking about the brain a lot. And your brain has given you some troubles.
Oh, yeah.
And so I do want to talk about...
I'm glad you brought that up.
Middle of your sobriety here, and I'm not sure quite when the date was, but you did get diagnosed with a brain tumor. And what did that look like, you know, when you got it?
There's a really good setup here for this.
Yes, please.
And I don't know that I told you this part or ever really, but so my earliest memory that I can trace back was this fear that lasted until the point we're about to talk about. I mean, I remember having this at what I know to be like 3, because my memories that I can trace back to were around beginning at 3 and 4 years old. A lot of people say they can't remember back that early, but I could. And but I had this overwhelming fear that I was going to get a brain tumor and die. Now, how the hell at that young age did I know what that was? I don't know. I was probably exposed or saw something. I have no idea.
It's one of those weird coincidences.
Yes, and it haunted me. When I say a day didn't go by that thought and fear captivated my brain for way too much time. And side note, growing up in a Pentecostal church where it's very, healing is a thing of like, there's direct correlation between your relationship with God, faith, and, sickness doesn't have a place here. Faith and God heal everything, and the alignment of your faith is always with God is always the manifestation of like whether or how much sin is in your life is this manifestation of like all these other things that are happening. So it's like for outsiders, it sounds a little crazy. It may be, I don't know. But talking about shame as a kid growing up, I never felt like I could voice that, because saying anything about having a fear of that level, doubt that God wasn't going to take care of me. I mean, like, I might as well have just been like, y'all,
I'm glad you mentioned it.
I'm not a Christian. I don't believe in God. I mean, go ahead and exile me to the, And when you talk about being raised in something so core of who you are, I couldn't have fathomed that was my identity. I couldn't fathom that being ripped away, right? So no one knew. This is something that like it was after my brain tumor came, like we got my diagnosis, that I was able to talk about it. So terrorizing fear that I had my whole life. And
Your worst fear.
yes. Like I didn't even put this on my fourth step.
Wow.
Yeah.
So tell us more about. So you got diagnosed. How old were you when you got diagnosed with a brain tumor?
So it was in 2016, and I got sober in 2011. I was fortunate enough to have been sober a few years in, and I say that because a myriad of things took place. The type of tumor I had is called a subependymoma. It was they caught it late. It's a tumor that typically starts growing in late adolescence and is usually found by the time a person is like 20 years old. I was 30.
You were 30.
And you had treatment for that? You have it resected?
So yes, and but it happened really quick because of how long I had been having symptoms for about 2 years, and it was like I said, a very late diagnosis. And
what
so,
were these symptoms?
like I would have. All right. So the tumor was, my brain surgeon was abnormally large for, I think, a brain surgeon. Typically, they're smaller in build stature. My brain surgeon's like almost 7 feet tall and got giant hands. And when he showed me how big it is, he was like, it's the size of my thumb. And his thumb's a lot bigger than mine, so I don't know why I'm holding mine up. But when I look at my brain scans today, remember the day I saw the first one, this is like 5 years into my recovery. I was terrified because I saw it before the doctor came, and I have to get a scan every year to make sure, I'm good. Mm-hmm. And I saw before my brain surgeon came in, and I remember being like, oh my God. I thought the darkness in the imaging was a tumor coming back. No, it's a giant hole that was left from your brain doesn't like grow back into the spot that, it's just
not
empty.
like a tree.
Yeah.
I kind of was thinking that.
Why
so
wouldn't you
I'm
think
glad
that?
I'm glad that you said that.
Yeah. And but yeah, it was big. It was wrapped by a vein and seated on, I think it's my cranial nerves in the floor of the cerebellum. I think I'm saying all of that correctly. So if you imagine a tumor that's being wrapped by a vein, when your blood pressure spikes, it pushes it all kinds of ways, right? Well, my blood pressure was spiking all the time because I was constant. There wasn't any room, and I was having anxiety because of what was going on in my brain. Extra amounts of anxiety, it was a cycle. Yes, and so my blood pressure would spike. It would cause these symptoms, and it would be everything from my heart rate skyrocketing to my lungs. I would have difficulty like pulling air into my lungs. Like I would be like, breathe, and I couldn't do it. I think driving was one of the bigger things. Exercise has been taken from me because I would hit this point where like it started with 60 minutes into exercising, I'd hit it. I'd get so dizzy I would feel like I couldn't breathe, and I'd be like, oh, I pushed myself too hard. And it just kept getting more and more less and less time I could exercise. And I think I was writing it off because of being I was a smoker at the time because I had not been relieved from that.
I can't breathe and I'm extra winded because I smoke.
Yes. Right. Yes. But it was increasing. My symptoms were increasing at a rapid pace. And so, I was going to the doctor. We were doing all kinds of tests, but they had not done a brain scan on me. And so, all right. So fast forward to the point where I say virtually catatonic because like I'm at this place where my symptoms are so bad, and like it was almost like anything that would stimulate me, external stimulation, movement, doing anything, focusing on anything would make my brain like it would trigger those symptoms. So like I was at a point where I had been in and out of the emergency room multiple times in this summer of 2016. And I don't remember one of my providers at this point. There's a whole team of specialists that are trying to figure out what the hell is wrong with me. I'd been misdiagnosed with anxiety, panic disorder, all these things over and over and over. Put on a myriad of now. Side note, caveat: every single healthcare provider I've had, and mind you, I have had many through all of this, have told me that I am the anomaly in the system. So I don't take my story as something, as like as a reason or excuse not to follow your doctor's orders or prescription and what have you. My experience just was that as they were trying to figure out what was wrong with me, they were prescribing for the symptoms that they were seeing, and it wasn't helping. It was I was having side effects from all the meds they were putting me on. And so it was 2 years of hell that I was very fortunate that I did not reach out for alcohol to ease all that was going on.
And that could have been a double whammy with the brain tumor and potential for alcohol withdrawal and seizures.
Yeah.
That can easily lead to really bad things.
And so I just remember where I'm at my final. This is the last doctor's appointment before we figured out what was wrong. My doctor rolls around in her little Dr. Rolly chair and has this look on her face. She says, "When was the last time we did a brain scan on you?" "We haven't." "Never." And she's like, okay, we're going to do that. I'm going to get you the first one we can. So it was that next day. Got my brain scan, which was Friday. Apparently that whole weekend, her and the oncology, everybody, what my tumor had looked like. When I tell my story, I need to find this out so I can start telling people. They were like 99% sure, to the point where they took all hope from me when I got the call Monday morning that it was this type of cancer that starts in your spine. By the time it spreads to your brain, it's
too late. Metastasize.
Yeah. Because when she told me, hey, we found the source of what's going on, and I started that process of that stage of grief where bargaining. I was like, but partially I'm trying to be positive. I'm like, okay, at least we know what it is. There's so many people I know who have brain tumors that they live with them because they can't, be operated on all these things. There's all kinds of hope. This is where I was going immediately.
What a cycle that must have been to go through mentally.
Well, because of the urgency with which they felt things needed to happen, she prepared me for what looked like was absolute, which was the worst. And she's just like, "Sweetie, we do not think that that's what this is. That does not look like that, and we need to get moving quick. We need to get moving quick, and I need to be honest with you about what this all looks like." So, in a nutshell, went home. She said, "Pack a bag, spend time with your family. Coming back to admit to the hospital tomorrow. We're gonna run tests. You may be in brain surgery within the next, I don't know how long." And I was. They went in to do brain surgery that week, and but I was ready. I was like, "Put me under and take it out. I don't want I've been living miserably for so long."
Not really in love with this brain tumor.
No, and it was. I mean, think about it. This is my worst fear coming true. Now, I want to sidestep for just a second and say that this term, if you've never heard it, euphoric recall, which is when someone who has experienced an addiction, we tend to have the rose-colored glasses on, looking back at our using and drinking instead of the negative consequences that are undoubtedly what we have to look forward to if we relapse. But definitely what the end looked like. I am so fortunate in that for whatever reason, for me, anytime I've thought about picking up another drink, I go straight to how bad it was. And it's not because I'm some perfect whatever, I work some perfect program. I don't know. It's a blessing and something that I'm grateful for. And I always say, I hope it never goes away. And it's one of the things, it's something that
I say as a miracle, because it kept me from drinking when, I mean, that and working a program, having a sponsor, doing, what I need to do to take care of myself was one of the things that kept me from obsessing or thinking that it would even be a remotely good solution for me to do when we didn't have an answer to my problems and I needed peace in the middle of that giant storm. And, I always say, once I bought into sobriety, and I remember that obsession of like, I can't imagine life without ever drinking again, without ever having like at least, the forever concept of never picking up a drink again, even though it's one day at a time, just thinking like, okay, this is a life that I hope to lead of not drinking again. There was a point with which I got there and I loved life and I was like, I can do this. I love life like this. I'm so much happier. But if my worst fear comes true, I cannot imagine being able to handle that. There's nothing in my life right now that I feel like could equip me to be able to handle that and not, but hopefully it just never comes true. Now, that thought process didn't keep it from coming back regularly. It definitely did. But I want to say that because, y'all, we use in addiction our fears and our worst fears to justify a drink all the time. My absolute worst fear came true and was confirmed, and I had 24 hours to go drink over it before I went into the hospital, and I did not.
A large
Congrats.
percentage.
Yeah.
A large percentage of people wouldn't do what you did, I don't think.
I know, and I think that the large percentage of people are the norm. And again, it's not because I don't think that it's because I'm some special person. I think that there's a lot to be just like grateful for, the divine. I think working a program, all the things together, right?
Good support system.
Good support system. So if one thing I know for sure is that if the support system, the community, and me working a program had not been in play, no, you can kiss the rest of that story goodbye. I would not have had what it took to make that decision. And so, but fast forward, I mean, like everything, the only thing that went right in that scenario, other than me not drinking, was that when pathology came back, it wasn't cancer. It didn't end up being cancer.
Wonderful.
Yes. But everything under the sun, second, when you have surgery, especially in the brain, there's always stuff that can go wrong, and go wrong it did. So I got MRSA in my head.
MRSA, yeah. Have some IV Vanc or something, or some antibiotics.
Yeah. But like where they had to do my surgery was, I've got we call my zipper, because it had to be undone so many times in the back of my head. It wasn't a typical craniotomy. It was in the back of the skull and the top of my neck. And so, you have this membrane that holds in all the fluid that surrounds your spine and your brain, called the dura. And it's like tissue paper. I'm not explaining that to you, obviously, because you're a doctor. But for the people who don't know, I mean, why would you know this? I had to learn about it. It's pretty important. And mine wouldn't heal. Like, mine would not heal back together. And I kept getting they couldn't get the MRSA out. I kept having to have multiple, like, they go back in and do another surgery on my brain to clean it out.
Jeez.
And yes. And so, and then one thing led to another, and like my body started to shut down because it wasn't
Been through
happy.
a war.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm blood clots throughout everything.
But no recent infections or anything like that.
No.
Got
Yeah.
that.
So wrapping that all up is just that I had any reason and every reason to drink, to relapse when I could, because hope was taken from me over and over and over again. And while it wasn't cancer, I was in and out of living in the ICU so many times that year that I watched the two people who I believed had the most faith in my life. I'm always like, God, should I say this or not? But I've definitely said it before. It hurts me to say it because I know this is the most important thing to them, because it's faith. I watched the faith that I was going to be okay leave from their eyes. And I had never seen that from them before. my parents. And there's a different way people treat you when they, or I don't want to say treat, interact with you,
I bet.
no matter how close they are, when they
might-
feel like hope is,
They may be feeling like this could be the last
Yeah.
weekend we have with our son.
yeah. And so I think that what I know, we're so close to the end of this and we probably have gone over, but I want to definitely throw this in there and say, you know, you hear all about like, yeah, I went through a bunch of stuff. I almost died. A lot of people did. And I'm not diminishing my story, but I want to at least wrap a bow on that and say that, we do not have to let when life happens define our decision making. We don't have to let fear be the guide. And we don't have to have certainty. I think that I let this misconception that I needed certainty in order to successfully move forward with a good decision. I didn't have certainty. That was real hard for me, but a wonderful lesson that I had to learn over and over throughout this whole process. And to the person that can identify with me when I say that, I would say that you will be surprised when you have to go through hard things if you pursue the next right thing, if you pursue hope relentlessly. The divine, your community, what's inside of you will surprise you as it shows up. But I think it requires us to show up for ourselves first.
Yes, absolutely.
Well said.
I love that. Thanks for tying all that up with a bow. And
Yeah.
there's a couple more things I want to
Yeah.
touch on before closing. Rooted Recovery Stories, 5 years, 200 plus episodes. Congrats.
Thank you.
On all of that. And just before we get into the next latest, greatest.
Yeah.
Let's say for our listeners out there, if they want to check out some highlight episodes that you know, to get into Rooted Recovery Stories, what are a couple or a few?
Oh my
They
God!
can
You
check
ask an ADHD person to give it their favorite. Oh, that's so hard for me. And because there have been so many good ones. I mean, depending on, there's a great, if hoarding, one of my favorite stories, because we tell stories from the family perspective, from the individual's perspective of addiction of all forms on that show. And one of my favorites was Mel, who came on and talked about growing up in a hoarding household and what she had to go through in the healing process to overcome all of the cycle of trauma that I mean, she should have ended up as an addict or a hoarder herself.
Right.
And as a miracle, she's one of my favorite stories we've told.
I'm going to go back and suss that one
Yeah. Chrissy Metz is another one, just because she's a lovely human being, not an alcoholic, but has close ties to alcoholism and other things addiction-wise that she's overcome, and from a mental health perspective. When it comes to addiction, somebody who I've had on my show twice and is a good friend of mine now is one of the former housewives of Orange County, Bronwyn Wyndham Burke. She lived out her, I would say, the height of her addiction during her seasons on that show, on that reality show. And she's given the day, like, she'll be able to laugh about it or be like, I don't want to talk about it, you know? But so many people know her for being the person that's like, that was just a real hot mess publicly, you know? And she's just as much on fire for recovery now as she was a hot mess, you know, then. A mother of, oh God, Bronwyn, forgive me if I'm getting this wrong. She either has 7 or 8 kids, and they're all, I always say this because I'm like so impressed. She had all of them, by like birthed all of them, and is just a lovely, wonderful mother and advocate today. She's since moved here and does a lot of work in the advocacy space. But her story is so beautiful because I think, just a side note on that, female recovery for females is especially important to me to highlight stories, because you look at our history in how, like, of addiction, of alcoholism, especially because it was kind of our first big thing that we dealt with here in our society. And you know, it wasn't something that was really acknowledged in women. I mean, it was hidden until I think it was Betty Ford who was the first major voice that came out. And until then, it was a very, very covert and hush-hush thing. If a woman came out with saying she was struggling or got caught, she was sent somewhere. It was kept a secret. And you never talk about it. And so you look at the history of men have been receiving care in bigger ways and more, you know, a lot longer than women.
More resources. Yeah.
Yes. And so, and even today, I think about, you know, a lot of women that are either still with their spouse or single mothers. So much more. I cannot imagine thinking about going to treatment or trying to get sober.
Me neither.
Taking care of little lives.
Right. Exactly.
You know, and so I just have so much admiration for females, and I love talking to females about their stories of recovery.
Me too. Females were our first guests
Yeah.
on the show, and I wanted to make that a thing.
I love that. So yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. No,
Yep.
I'm excited to check those two out, and I don't want to discredit or not continue talking about that fully.
Yeah.
But I mean, you have something new on the horizon, and that is the
Yeah.
Patrick Custer show.
The Patrick Custer show. You know, it's funny. I still can't get used to this because my family, like I said, I grew up, and they always joked with me about how Patrick would turn everything to a stage. My siblings and my parents half the time jokingly would be like, "It's the Patrick Custer show."
They were right. Also, be careful what you throw out into the universe for yourself, because there's been some good and bad there.
Yeah. Well, it's
just
actually,
kidding.
I know, it's actually now this is a real show. It's premiering next week in the week that we are filming this. I don't know when this will come out, but it's premiering October 28th. And so, doing so much of the similarities of the same stuff that I've always done, just under a different umbrella. And
Mental health, substance use,
Yeah.
recovery, trauma.
doing a little bit more broad, yes, all of those things, and talking about. So we're going to be talking to some more people with, I would say, stories that are a little bit more on the fringes of that. So just overcoming adversity in different ways that might be a little bit more outside the realm of those prescriptive, things that you just named, and so the human experience of finding courage in the middle or after a storm to heal and forge resilience and a newness of life that it takes to do better and be better for yourself is a beautiful thing, and not everybody is able to do it. And so I'm fascinated by the people that have the stories that have been able to, and they're the ones that, just like what we're doing today, this is what hope is contagious. Stories have always been something. When you ask me about metaphor, why does it make such a big difference for me? Because when I got sober, I could not focus on a single treatment group, whatever. I wasn't going to hear anything. But the thing that stuck with me was when people would tell their stories.
It's real. Something that's real.
Yes, I would get pulled in by the drama of the story, because who doesn't love some drama? And before I knew it, I was getting bamboozled into buying into a principle that I hadn't paid attention to yet. And I'm like, oh, damn, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I have to think, I know that there are a number of other people out there like me in that regard. And I'm still that way. Tell me a story and it's probably going to change my life in one way or another for good. So
all of us are easily influenced by other people and other things in our lives.
Yeah.
And I think you're doing something great.
Thank you.
Really, really great. Always have appreciated it and always appreciated you. But does that mean that rooted recovery stories goes away?
Well, it's not going away, but we will not be continuing. So we're kind of putting it on the shelf to be accessed, for everyone. So it'll still be there. It's not going anywhere.
I guess I didn't mean going away, but
yeah,
this will be the
Transition.
new show. And
yeah.
new
This is
transition.
is my new journey, my new chapter, and
Exciting.
it is. It really is. So. Be on the lookout. There's going to be a lot of good stuff coming out.
When you become an absolute superstar,
oh
don't
gosh,
forget about Breaking Down Addiction with Johnny and Chad.
Yeah.
I would never. Y'all
Thank
have
you.
the coolest set.
Thanks.
It's so awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Yeah,
appreciate it.
we're
Yeah.
proud of
Well,
it.
thanks for the power of your storytelling today, and for the people out there that it could potentially help. So thanks.
Yeah,
You
thanks
got
so
it.
much for being on here. And is there anything else that you want to say in closing? The Patrick Custer show has been talked about, but anything else on the
Just,
horizon?
if you want to find me on Instagram or any of the platforms, it's the Patrick Custer, and the show is thepatrickcustershow.com. So connect with us and find some hope. You won't be sorry.
Great.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Yeah, thanks a lot for today, buddy. Bye.
Yeah.